Hello, hello, hello! Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear, marvelous, wonderful scholars, to the Horace. Do we remember everything tonight? Okay. Ovid, will you please close the door? Thank you. All right, book ready, water ready, got everything. The desk is nice and clean. Let's see. Study! Fooled you, didn't I? Hello there, my dear scholars. Welcome. Hello there, Julian 20. Congratulations on getting first. What does that mean? Oh, my goodness gracious. How is all my dear, marvelous, wonderful scholars tonight? I hope you're all doing well. Wherever you are, whenever you are across this vast multiverse. Or omniverse, actually, because multiverse is small. The omniverse, I exist outside the omniverse, which means that everyone in the omniverse. Yes, exactly. I hope you understand that. So, how. Oh, Julian 20, so good I could not begin to tell you. Well, I'll take that as a good thing, obviously. Oh, well. Oh, my goodness gracious. It's been an okay. Thought I heard something for a second there. Okay. Well, it's been an okay day from Horace and myself. We had a little break from our work. Enjoyed moving around the study a little bit. But yeah, it's been pretty good. I don't have much to report, my dear scholars. Honestly, uh, that's a problem sometimes. You want to come in, you want to do a wonderful introduction to my dear, marvelous scholars, the scholars who I do this for. You are worth everything, my dear scholars. I am so glad I have you. And I really don't have anything. Union 20, did you clean the study yet? Well, excuse me. Okay, stream is done. What do you mean I made that promise to them? I didn't make that promise to them. It was your idea, Horace. Fine. Look, some of us might have promised some things that we haven't yet, you know, agreed to. Horse! And some of us might have gotten a little bit distracted. Virgil! And some of us might have forgotten to remind some other of us to do certain things that they had said to their dear scholars they would do. Harvard! Um, Obviously, I can't name those individuals for their sake. Excuse me. But for now, we'll move on from that, and I will try and keep promises better in future. Private Maverick. Oh, hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome, Private Maverick. Oh boy, story time. Yes, indeed. Tonight is story time. I got a, I got a little scratch in my throat tonight. I don't know why. I swear it's this terrible interdimensional dust I've got everywhere. Think that I'd be cleaner that way. But anyway, as Private Maverick said, tonight, my dear scholars, we are continuing our reading. Julian 20, is one of your rooms on fire? Actually, yes. We do have a couple rooms, I believe, that are constantly on fire. So yes, there is a room on fire. Why do you ask? I mean, it's kind of an obvious thing. I'm certain at least one of you have rooms on fire. Julian 20, Smoky. No. I don't think so. My name is Matsu. Besides, that individual's a bear. I don't look like a bear at the moment. I think. Do I? Horace, I don't have paws right now, do I? Because I know sometimes I manifest my form in other ways, and I know there was that one time I went to that one planet, and I swear they make me manifest in the strangest possible iterations. Oh, where was I? Oh, yes. Reading stream. Yes. Tonight, my dear scholars, we are continuing our reading of Dr. Sin by Russell Thorndike. Um, Last time, you know what's interesting is my realization. I was just thinking about this as I was preparing earlier. That this book doesn't have much plot at the moment. Last time, at the village of Dimchurch, the king's men have shown up and are looking to see if they can find smugglers. And that kind of summarizes it. I mean, we're in 7 chapters in, and most of the story so far is very much atmosphere. It's good atmosphere, mind you. I am enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying it as well. There's that creepy individual who lacks ears and a tongue, which is just like not very good. But yeah, we haven't had much in terms of a solid plot yet, really. But I digress. I love doing that. Makes me happy. Um, so my dear scholars, shall we begin our reading of Dr. Sin today and see what mysterious happenings occur on Romney Marsh? Julian 20 says yes, please. All right. I will get started then. So then, my dear scholars, sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking. Dim the lights if you wish, and let us continue our reading of Dr. Sin by Russell Thorndike. Making sure I have plenty of water. Chapter 7. Clegg the Buccaneer. There was one man who knew Romney Marsh as well as the squire. This was Sennacherib Pepper. And what's more, he knew the marsh by night as well as by day, for he was the visiting physician to the Marsh farms, and his work often called him to patients at night. He had seen curious things upon the marsh, from his own account, hinting darkly about the witches and devils that rode on fiery steeds through the mists. The villagers, of course, believed his yarns, but the squire pooh-poohed them, and as it was well known that Sennacherib Pepper was a hard drinker, some people put his stories down to that. But although he gave no credence to his tales, Sir Antony rather enjoyed the physician, and he was a frequent visitor to the courthouse. He had prevailed upon him to stay to supper this very night, introducing him to the captain as his dear friend Sennacherib Pepper, the worst master of physics and the most atrocious liar on Romney Marsh. For although Sennacherib was a very touchy old customer and was ever on the brink of losing his temper, Sir Antony could never resist a joke at his expense. Let me think of a voice for this one, my dear scholars. "Zounds, sir," he retorted, "if I was presenting you to Sir Anthony, I should most certainly style him the worst man of business upon the marsh." "How do you make that out?" cried the squire. "My dear sir," went on Sennacherib to the captain, "his tenants rob him at every turn. Everybody but himself knows that half the wool from his farms finds its way over to Calais." Private Maverick sounds terrible. Oh, come on! Is my voice that bad? Oh, my dear captain, said Dr. Sin, who was warming himself at the fireplace. Our good friend, Pepper, is repeatedly coming into contact with the old gentleman himself upon the marsh. Why, only last year he informed us that he met at least a score of his bodyguard, riding in perfect style, and most approved manner across from Ivy Church on fire-snorting steeds. And how many witches is it now that you have seen? A good round dozen, I'll be sworn. And they were riding saddle-leg, a thing that we could hardly credit. So, little note there, old gentleman, of course, refers to the devil. There was an old folklore belief in some locations that to state his name outright was to summon him. So many individuals would find ways around saying his name. "Well, let us hope," said the physician, "that the presence of the king's men will frighten the devils away. I've seen them, and I've no wish to see them again." "You can set your mind quite at rest, sir," returned the captain. "For if, as you say, their horses breathe fire, they will afford excellent targets on the flat marsh. We'll hail the ship, and see what 90 good guns can do for the devils." All through supper was this vein of banter kept up, until the meal was finished and pipes were alight, and Dennis had retired to his room with a glum face, to steer, most surely against his will, upon a course of literature. Then the conversation gradually drifted into the southern seas, and the captain began telling stirring tales of Clegg, the pirate, who had been hanged at Rye. "I should like to have been at that hanging," he cried, finishing a tale of horror, "for that scoundrel, as you have just heard, was a bloodthirsty for that fellow, as you have just heard, was a bloodthirsty scoundrel." "So it is always said," replied Dr. Sin. "But don't you think that some of his exploits may have been exaggerated?" "Not a bit of it!" exclaimed the captain. "I believe everything I hear about that man, except the last blunder that put his neck into the noose at Rye." "That is his only export upon which there is any certainty," said the physician. "It was a mistake murdering the revenue man," agreed Dr. Sin. "But Clegg was drunk, and threw all caution to the devil." "Clegg had been drunk enough before," said the captain, "and yet he had never made a mistake. No, he was too clever to be caught in the meshes of a tavern brawl. Besides, from all we know of his former life, he would surely have put up a better defense at his trial. You don't tell me that a man who could terrorize the high seas all that time was going to let himself swing for a vulgar murder in a Rye tavern?" "But it is a noticeable thing," put in the parson, "that all great criminals have made one stupid blunder that has caused their downfall." "Which generally means," went on the captain, "that up to that moment it was luck and not genius that kept them safe. But we know that Clegg was a genius. I've had it first hand from high admiralty men, from men who have lived in the plantations and traded in Clegg's seas. The more I hear about that rascally pirate, the more it makes me wonder. Someday, I mean to get the time to clearing up the mystery. What mystery? Said the parson. The mystery of how Clegg could persuade another man to commit wilful murder in order to take his name upon the scaffold, said the captain. It takes some power of persuasion to accomplish that. You'll agree. How? What on earth do you mean? Said the parson. Simply this, shouted the captain, beating the table with his fist, that Clegg was never hanged at Rye. There was a pause, and the gentlemen looked at him with grave faces. Presently, the squire laughed. "Upon my soul, captain," he said, "you run our friend Sennacherib here. Yeah, you run our friend Sennacherib here uncommon close with staggering statements. I wonder which of you will tell us first that Queen Anne is not dead." I need to get a drink of water again. Oh my goodness. "Queen Anne is dead," exclaimed the captain, "because she was not fortunate enough to persuade somebody else to die for her. Now I maintain that this is exactly what Clegg did do." Can you let us have the... Oh, wrong voice. Can you let us have the reasons that led you to this theory? Said the parson, interested. "I don't see why not," replied the captain. "In the first place, the man hanged at Rye was a short, thick-set man, tattooed from head to foot, wearing enormous brass earrings, and his black hair cropped short as a roundhead." "That's an exact description of him," said Dr. Syn, "for as everybody knows, I visited the poor wretch in his prison cell at Rye, and at his desire wrote out his final and horrible confession." "Is that so?" said the captain. Oh, yes. I remember hearing about how he was visited by a parson. I thought it a bit incongruous at the time." Oh my... That is an interesting thing, isn't it, my dear scholars? That just, well, I suppose being visited by a man of religion would not be unusual for an execution, but still, that's an interesting piece of coincidence, isn't it? "And so it was," agreed the parson, "for I have never seen a more unrepentant man go to meet his Maker." "Well, now," went on the captain, his eyes glistening with excitement, "I have it on very good authority that the real Clegg in no way answered this description. He was a weird-looking fellow, thin face, thin legs, long arms, and what's more to the point, never tattooed in his life save one by some unskilled artist who had tried to portray a man walking the plank with a shark waiting below. This picture was executed so poorly that the pirate would never let anyone try again." "Then I also have it on the very best evidence that Clegg's hair was grey, and had been grey since quite a young man. So that does away with your black, close-cropped hair. And again, I have it that Clegg would never permit his ears to be pierced for brass rings, affirming that they were useless lumber for a seaman to carry." "Don't you think," said the squire, "that all this was a clever dodge to avoid discovery?" "A disguise?" queried the captain. "Yes, I confess that the same thing occurred to me." "And might I ask how you managed to obtain your real description of Clegg?" asked the vicar. "At first," said the captain, "from second or third of sources, but the other day I got first-hand evidence from a man who had served aboard Clegg's ship, the Imogene. That ugly-looking rascal who was helping Bill Spiker carry the rum barrel. The bosuns questioned him for upward of 3 hours in his queer lingo, and managed to arrive by the nodding and shaking of the man's head in an exact description of him. He was one of Clegg's men, said the vicar, amazed. Then pray, sir, what is he doing in the Royal Navy? Oh. Oh. I'm looking at the next sentence, my dear scholars, and oh boy, this has not aged well, so I'm going to edit it down because, yeah, I'm not going to say some of these lines. All I will say is that back then when this was written, there was a certain belief system which is now absolutely proven wrong in every aspect, but was actually which was actually at the time was strongly believed in, even to the point of believing it was actually science, and I do not want to say these words. I use him as a tracker, replied the captain. You know some of these men have remarkable gifts of tracking. He's invaluable to me on these smuggling traps. It's positively uncanny the way this rascal can smell out a trapdoor or a hiding place. I suppose you're nothing of the sort in this house. There's a stairway leading to a priest's hole in this very chimney corner, though you would never guess at it, returned the squire. And what's more, I bet a guinea that nobody would discover it. I'll lay you 10 to 1 that he will. Aye, and within a quarter of an hour. Done, cried the squire. That will be sport. We'll have him round. And then he summoned the butler. There's one condition I should have made, said the captain when the butler opened the door. The rascal is dumb and cannot speak a word of English, but my boatswain can speak his lingo and will make him understand what we require of him. Fetch 'em both round, cried the squire. Gadzooks, it's a new sport, this. Oh my gosh, using humans like this is just awful. This is just awful. I'm sorry, my dear. I almost said dear squires, my dear scholars. You're all coming up in the world. You're all squires apparently now. Congratulations on your newfound wealth. Let's just start laughing again. Just want to stop it. I don't know why this is making me giggle so much. Stop it. Oh no, Horace, I got the giggles. I got the giggles again. This isn't that funny either. I'm gonna choke on my water. I'll be right back, my dear scholars. Give me a second. Okay, I think I have it under control. Oh, it wasn't even that funny, and I don't know why. Is there left giggling? Ah, where am I? The butler was accordingly dispatched with the captain's orders to the boatswain that he should step round at once to the courthouse with the man. Meanwhile, Dennis was summoned from the paths of learning, and the terms of the wager had been explained to him. He awaited in high excitement the coming of the seamen. "How is that? How is it that the fellow's dumb?" asked the physician. "Tongue cut out at the root, sir," replied the captain. "He might well be deaf too, for his ears are also gone, probably along with his tongue. But he's not deaf. He understands the boatswain all right." "Did you ever find out how he lost them?" asked the squire. "It was Clegg," replied the captain, "and after having been tortured in this pleasant fashion, he was marooned upon a coral reef." Excuse me. "Good God!" said the vicar, going pale with the thought of it. "How did he get off?" asked the squire. "God alone knows," returned the captain. "Can't you get out of it? Can't you get it out of him in some way?" said the squire. "Joe Mallet, the boatswain, can't make him understand some things," said the captain. "But he located the reef upon which he'd been marooned in the Admiralty chart, and it's as God-forsaken a piece of rock as you could wish. No vegetation, far from the beat of ships, not even registered upon the mercantile maps. As well be the man in the moon as a man on that raft, for all the chance you'd have to get off." "But he got off," said the squire. "How?" "That's just it," said the captain. "How? If you can find that out, you're smarter than Joe Mallet, who seems the only man who can get things out of him." "By Gad, I'm eager to look at the poor devil," cried the squire. Trying to remember the physician's voice again. "So am I," agreed the physician. These people are terrible. "And I'd give a lot to know how he. Yeah. And I'd give a lot to know how he got off that reef," said Dr. Sin. But at that instant the butler opened the door, and Job Mallet shuffled into the room looking troubled. "Where's that man?" said the captain sharply, for the boatswain was alone. "I don't know, sir," answered the boatswain sheepishly. "He's gone." "Gone? Where to?" said the captain. "Don't know, sir," answered the boatswain. "I see him curled up in the barn along along of the others just afore I stepped outside to stand watch, and when I went to wake him to bring him along of me, why, blessed if he hadn't disappeared." "Did you look for him?" said the captain. "Well, sir, I was a-looking for him as far down as to the end of the field, where one of them ditches run," said the boatswain, "when I see something what fair beat anything I ever see afore. It was a regiment of horse, some 20 of 'em maybe, but if them riders weren't devils, well, I ain't a seaman." What were they like?" screamed Sennacherib. "Wild-looking fellows, on horses what seemed to snort out fire, and the faces of the riders and horses were all moonlight sort of colour, but before I'd shouted 'Belay there!' they'd all disappeared in the mist." "Oh, hello there, Zen. Welcome. You're just in time. We are still reading our first chapter of the night of Dr. Sin, a smuggler's tale. Have a seat. Good to see you here."
"How far away were these riders?" said the captain.
"Why, right on top of me, as it seemed," stammered the boatswain.
"Joe Mallet,"
said the captain, shaking his large finger at him,
"I'll tell you what it is, my man. You've been drinking."
"Well, sir," admitted the seaman, "the rum did seem extra good tonight, and perhaps I did take more than I could manage, though come to think of it, sir, I've often drunk more than I swallowed tonight,
I've not seen a thing, sir. You get back to the barn and go to sleep, said the captain, and lock the door from the inside. There's no need to stand watches tonight, and it won't do that foreign rascal any harm to find himself on the wrong side of the door for once.
Then Dr. Sin, the arch nemesis of Mr. Coase, as they both are in love with the same woman, Lady Tan. Oh, oh, Zen.
Job Mallet saluted and left the room.
You see what it comes to, Sennacherib, laughed the squire. Drink too much and you're bound to see devils.
I don't believe that fellow has drunk too much, said the physician, getting up. But I'm walking home, and it's late. Time I made a start.
Mind the devils, laughed the vicar as he shook hands.
They'll mind me, sir, said Sennacherib as he grasped his thick stick.
And so the supper party broke up, the squire lighting the captain to his room, Dr. Sin returning to the vicarage, and Sennacherib Pepper setting out for his lonely walk across the devil-ridden marsh. Then that was my legally mandated trigonometry joke for the year. Well, I am honored that I could be the place where you do your legally mandated trigonometry joke for the year. The window of the captain's room looked out upon the courtyard. He could see nothing of the sea, nothing of the marsh. Now, as these were the two things he intended to see, aye, and on that very night, he waited patiently till the house was still, for he considered that there was more truth in Sennacherib Pepper's story than the squire allowed. Indeed, it was more than likely that the squire disallowed them for reasons of his own. This he determined to find out. So half an hour after the squire had bade him good night, he softly crossed the room to open the door. But the door was locked on the outside. Yulian 20, haha, Yulian, I failed trig. Oh, you did? Oh dear. Don't feel too bad, Yulian 20. Even I, an omniversal librarian and higher being, am terrible in mathematics. It's one of the banes of my existence. But yes, things are getting exciting. Although it is interesting that that the man, as we'll call him the man, because I'm not going to use the other term they use in this story, has gone missing. Zen F math. Oh yes. Well, let's not be too harsh with math, but yes, that's that exactly. I'm not going to repeat that word because I try to avoid it. Here's the. All right. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, just trying to remember who these characters were. Then I'll get into it when the humans figure out that they skipped an entire integer. Well, just imagine what the humans will be like when they find out all the higher forms of math that exist within the upper reaches of the Omniverse. Most, little spoiler, most of their mathematics are wrong. All right, let's continue our little story then. Chapter 8, Dogging the Schoolmaster. Now Jerry lived with his grandparents, and they went always early to bed. Yulian 20, my dad was a math teacher. Oh, I'm sorry. I am so sorry, Yulian 20. That must have been hard on you. And indeed, by 10 o'clock they were both snoring loudly, whilst Jerry would be tucked up in the little attic dreaming of the gallows and hating Mr. Rash. Jerry was troubled a good deal by dreams, but upon this particular night they were more than unusually violent. Whether owing to the great excitement caused by the coming of the king's men, or due to the extra doses of rum that the youngster had indulged in, who can say? He dreamt that he was out on the marsh chasing the schoolmaster. That was all very well. Quite a pleasant dream to young Jerk. Yes, Jerk is his name, by the way. Jerry Jerk. That is the child's name. That is not fake. And not at all a nightmare. But unfortunately, there were things chasing Jerry as well. And the nearer he seemed to get to the flying schoolmaster, the nearer got the things behind him. There was no doubt at all in the dreamer's mind as to what they were. They were the marsh devils that he had heard about from infancy, the very demon riders that old Sennacherib Pepper was credited with having seen. He glanced over his shoulders and saw them pounding after him, grim riders on the most ghastly steeds. The noise of the hoofs got nearer and nearer, and run as he would, he felt that he would never reach the schoolmaster before he himself was caught by the demons. Then in the dream the schoolmaster turned round, and Jerk with a scream saw that what he had been chasing was no longer the schoolmaster, but the devil himself. So there he was, between the demon riders and the very old gentleman that Dr. Sin preached about on Sundays. Now, although Jerry was no coward, he was not quite proof against such a shock as this. So he just uttered the most appalling scream and fell into a ditch that had suddenly appeared before him. The fall into the ditch was very hard, so hard indeed that the sleeper awoke to find that he was sitting on the floor with the bedclothes on top of him. But he was still uncertain whether or not he was awake, for although he rubbed his eyes exceedingly hard, he could still hear the pounding hooves of the demon horses, and they were coming nearer. He rubbed his eyes again, twisting his fingers into his ears, and listened. Yes, there was really no mistaking it. There were horses coming along the road before the house, and he was certain in his mind that they were the phantoms of his dream. So he went to the casement and looked out. Prepared for a surprise he certainly was, but not such a terrible one as he got. Along the road at a gallop went a score or so of horsemen. That they were not of this world was very easy to see, for there was moonlight shining from their faces, and from the faces of the horses as well. Then, the migratory ditch. They're nearly extinct nowadays, sadly. They were predated to extinction by their natural predator, the random pothole in the asphalt. Oh, yes. Yes, I know. Shame. I believe that the random pothole in the asphalts are starting to grow a little too much in number, unfortunately. It is a problem. Where was I? The riders were fantastically dressed in black and wore queer tall hats, the likes of which Jerry had only seen in ghost books. They were fine riders too, for they seemed to the terrified boy actually to grow out of their horses. Jerry noticed too that there were long streamers of black flying from the harness. The curious light that shone upon the riders made it possible for Jerry to see their faces, which were entirely diabolical, for one and all were laughing as they rode. They were going at a good pace, so that as they appeared, just so sudden did they go. Jerk opened the casement and flung out of the window, but the mist had entirely swallowed the riders up, although he could still hear the distant noise of their horses. It sounded as if one of them was coming back. Yes, he was sure of it. So he very quickly shut the window again. The clatter of hooves got louder, and presently Jerk through the pane caught sight of a rider trotting out of the mist. Now, there seemed something familiar about this figure, and the peculiar jogging of the steed. But the rider was well under the window before Jerk discovered that this was no demon, but the hated schoolmaster. What was he doing riding out at this hour? Thought the youngster. Was he in league with the spirits of the marsh and so could pass through them without being scared? For there was no other turning along the road, and the schoolmaster, although very repulsive to behold, was not looking in any way concerned. So Jerry came to the rapid conclusion that his deadly enemy was in some way or other connected with that mysterious band of horse. Drink.
So, he thought, if he's up to mischief, I must find out what that mischief is, and if it's a hiding business, all the better.
Quickly and silently, Jerk pulled on his breeches and coat, and with his boots in his hand, crept out upon the stairs. Everything was very still, and the creaks and cracks of the old oak were horrible. And then his grandfather did snore so very loud, and just as he was entering the kitchen, he heard his grandmother cry out,
Jerry, come here!
that nearly made him jump out of his skin, but he heard immediately afterward her wheezing roar mingled with those of her better half, so he concluded that she had only cried out in her sleep. In the kitchen he put on his boots, and just as he was opening the back door, he heard the tall clock in the front room striking 11. He left the door on the latch, and climbing through a hedge, struck out across the marsh. He knew well enough that by running he could pick up the road again, so as to be ahead of the rider. But it was difficult going at night, and by the time he had scrambled through the hedge again, he saw the schoolmaster passing round at the back of Mip's shop. There was still a light burning in the front window, and after tying up his bony horse, the schoolmaster entered the shop.
What's he wanting at a coffin shop at this hour?
Thought Jerk.
I wish he was ordering his own, I do.
And with this uncharitable thought he crept along the road and approached the house. A coffin shop isn't a pleasant thing to behold at night. Rows of coffin planks leaned up against the provision shelves, for Mip supplied the village with bread and small eatables. A half-finished coffin reposed on trestles in the center of the floor, and around the room hung every conceivable article that had to do with coffins. The atmosphere of coffins spread over everything in the store, and whether young Jerk looked at the bottles of preserves on this shelf or the loaves of dark bread on that, to him they meant but one thing: death. And he was quite satisfied that anyone bold enough to eat of the food in that grisly shop well deserved to be knocked up solid in one of Mip's boxes. The sexton himself was examining with great care a mixture that he was stirring inside a small cauldron. Mr. Ratch approached him and asked him if there was enough. Drink. Ah, my goodness.
Of course there is, answered the sexton. Why, the others all had theirs. But there's only you left. Late again as usual. Hang the pot onto your saddle, and come along.
Jerk fell to wondering what on earth could be inside that pot. He could smell it through the broken casement, and a right nasty smell it was. Mips led the way through the back of the shop, and Jerk, by changing his position, could see him fixing the pot to the saddle, as he had suggested. Then springing onto the horse's back with marvelous agility for so ancient a man, he went off through the village with the schoolmaster trotting at the side, and the wary Jerk following in the shadows. They led him right through the village to the vicarage, and tied the horse behind a tree at the back. Then Mipps, producing a key, opened the front door, and a minute later Jerk, from a point of vantage behind the low churchyard wall, saw the sexton throw a log onto the low smoldering fire in the old grate of the front room that was the doctor's study. Mipps also lighted a candle that stood upon the chimney board. Jerry could see the room quite distinctly now. He could see the old sexton curled up in the oak settee by the fireplace, and the schoolmaster's shadow flickering upon the wall. He also had a good view of the courthouse, where there were candles still burning in the library, and the hearty voice of the squire would keep sounding out loud and clear. Presently the door opened and a figure came out, going off in the direction of the vicarage barn, and Jerk had no difficulty in recognizing the boatswain of the king's men. Oh, interesting. So this chapter is taking place at the same time as events in the last chapter, so we're seeing it at a different point of view. As soon as he had disappeared, Jerk got another surprise, for they came across the churchyard, dodging in and out among the tombstones. A truly terrible thing. Its face seemed to the boy like the face of a dead man, for it looked quite pale, and its white hair gave it a further corpse-like expression. Jerk was terrified that the thing would see him, but it didn't, for the shining black eyes, unlike anything he had ever seen before, was directed entirely upon the lighted window of the vicarage. Up to it the figure crawled and peeped into the room. The schoolmaster was standing with his back to the window, but he presently turned and went to the door. The weird figure crouched in the flower bed under the sill, while Mr. Rash opened the front door and went round to the back of the house, to the tree where he had tied the horse. As soon as he had gone, the pale-faced man entered the house. Now Jerry fell to wondering what this was all about, and what the little sexton would do if he caught sight of the apparition. But the sexton's eyes were closed and his mouth wide open, and Jerry could hear him beginning to snore, when the door of the room was open, and the figure cautiously crossed towards the fire. The sexton didn't move. He was asleep. Need a drink of water? Now, above the chimney piece hung a harpoon. It belonged to Dr. Sin, who was a collector of nautical curiosities, and this harpoon had once been Clegg's. It was a curious shape, and it was supposed that only one man in the southern seas besides the pirate had ever succeeded in throwing it. The figure was now between Mipps and the firelight, and it began examining the curios upon the mantel-board. Suddenly, it perceived the harpoon, and with a cry unhooked it from its nail. The sexton opened his eyes, and the figure swung the dangerous weapon above his head, and Jerk thought the sexton's last moment had come. But Mipps, uttering a piercing cry, kicked out most lustily against the chimney-piece, and backwards he went along with the settee. Perhaps it was the horrible cry that frightened the thing, because it came running out of the front door with the harpoon still in its hand, and leaping the churchyard wall, disappeared among the tombstones in the direction of the marsh. Mipps got up and ran to the door, crying out for Rash, and at the same time the door of the courthouse opened, and Dr. Sin came striding toward the vicarage. Hold on. No more parochial work, I trust, tonight, Mr. Sexton? He said cheerily, but then noticing Mipps' terrified demeanor, he added, What's the matter, Mr. Mipps? You look as grave as a tombstone.
You would, so would you, sir, if you'd seen what I'd seen. He was standing over me, looking straight down at me.
What was? Said the parson.
A thing, said the sexton. Come, come, what sort of thing?
Demanded the vicar.
The likes of a man, replied the sexton, thinking, but not a living man, a sort of shape, a done, and yet I can't help fancying I've seen it somewhere before. By thunder! He cried suddenly. I know! That's why I took Clegg's harpoon. For God's sake, come inside, man!
And in they went hurriedly, followed by Rash, who had just arrived back on the scene. Inside the room, Mr. Mipps again narrated in a horrified whisper what he had just seen, pointing now out of the window in the direction taken by the thing, and now at the empty nail where Clegg's harpoon had hung. Dr. Syn went to the window to close the shutters, and saw Sennacherib Pepper crossing the far side of the churchyard. "Good night, Sennacherib," he cried out and shut the shutters. A minute later, out came the schoolmaster, but instead of going round for his horse as Jerry expected, he walked quickly after Sennacherib Pepper.
How long is this going on for, I wonder?
Thought young Jerk, as he picked himself up and set off after the schoolmaster. Oh, things are getting dark, my dear scholars. Oh, the thing, as he calls it. So, this person has a connection with Captain Clegg. It is interesting that Dr. Syn, of all people, has one of Clegg's items at his home, doesn't it? I wonder if that's important. Can't be certain of anything, of course, in a story like this. Are you enjoying the book, by the way, my dear scholars? Private matter, quite. Julian 20. Yes, Zen. It's neat so far. Yeah, it's pretty. How do I put this? It's pretty intense in places already. I'll give it that. Not bad for a book from, when was this year? From 1915. The next chapter, it looks like, doesn't sound like it's to be a pleasant time either. Chapter 9. The End of Sennacherib Pepper. Doesn't sound good for the physician. Excuse me. For half a mile out of the village, Mr. Rash kept well in the rear of Sennacherib Pepper, and Jerk kept well behind the schoolmaster. It was a weird night. Everything was vivid, either very dark or very light. Such grass as they came to was black grass. Such roadways as they crossed were white roads. The sky was brightly starlit, but the mountainous clouds were black. The edges of the great dike sluices were pitch black, but the water and thin mud were silver steel, reflecting the light of the sky. Sennacherib Pepper was a black shadow ahead. The schoolmaster was a blacker one. And Jerk? Well, he couldn't see himself. He rather wished he could, for company. Although Mr. Rash was a very black-looking figure, there was something small and ugly that kept catching the silver steel reflected in the dike water. Oh. Oh dear. I can guess what it is. What was it? Jerry couldn't make out. It was something in Mr. Rash's hand, and he kept bringing it out and thrusting it back into one of his overcoat pockets. But the young adventurer had enough to do keeping himself from being discovered, else he might have understood, and so saved Sennacherib's life. I can guess what it is, my dear scholars. I can guess what it is. When they got about a mile from the village, Mr. Rash quickened his pace. Jerry quickened his accordingly, but Sennacherib Pepper, who had no object in doing so, did not quicken his. Once the schoolmaster stopped dead, and the young hangman only just pulled up in time. So near was he, and once again the silver thing came out of the pocket, but this time Mr. Rash looked at it before thrusting it back again. Then he began to run.
Is that you, Dr. Pepper?
He called out.
Now, this is strange, thought Jerk, for the schoolmaster must surely have known what man he was following, and why hadn't he cried out before?
Sennacherib stopped. Jerk drew himself down amongst the rushes in the dike, and crept as near to the two men as he dared. He was within easy earshot, anyhow.
Who is it?
Asked Pepper, and then recognizing the young man, he added,
Why, it's the schoolmaster.
Yes, Dr. Pepper, replied Rash, and it's been a hard job I've had to recover you, for it's an uncanny way over the marsh. Just then there was the sound of horses galloping in the distance. Jerk could hear it distinctly.
What do you want me for?
Asked the physician. It was the vicar sent me for you, sir, replied the schoolmaster. He wants you to come at once. There's somebody dying in the parish.
Do you know who it is?
Said the physician. I believe it's old Mrs. Tapsole in the bakehouse, but I'm none too sure. Indeed, it seemed to Jerk that uncertainty was the whole attitude of the schoolmaster. He seemed to be listening to the distant noise of galloping and answering old Sennacherib at random. Perhaps the physician also noticed something in his manner, for he looked at him pretty straight and said,
I don't think it's Mrs. Tapsole either, for I saw her today and she was as merry as a cricket.
She's had a fit, sir. That's about what she's had, replied the schoolmaster vaguely.
Then, said the physician, you do know something about it, do you?
I know just what I was asked to say, returned the schoolmaster irritably. It's not my business to tell you what's the matter with your patients. If you don't know, I'm sure I don't. You're a doctor, aren't you? No doubt old Pepper would have pulled the schoolmaster up with a good round curse for his boorishness, had he not at that instant caught the sound of the galloping horses.
Look there!
He cried. At full gallop across the marsh were going a score or so of horsemen, lit by a light that shone from their faces and from the heads of their mad horses. Jerk could see Rash shaking, as if with the ague, but for some reason he pretended not to see the hideous sight. What are you looking at? He said, for I see nothing.
There! There!
Screamed old Pepper.
You must see something there.
Nothing but dike, marsh, and the high road, faltered the schoolmaster.
No, there, look, riders, men on horses, marsh fiends,
yelled the terrified physician.
What in hell's name are you trying to scare me for?
Cursed the trembling Rash.
Don't I tell you I see nothing? Ain't that enough for you?
Then God forgive me, cried poor Sennacherib. But I can see him, and you can't. There's something wrong with my soul.
Then God have mercy on it.
The words came somehow through the schoolmaster's set teeth. The silver steel leapt from the pocket of his overcoat, and Sennacherib was savagely struck twice under the arm as he pointed at the riders. He gave one great cry and fell forwards, while the schoolmaster, entirely gone to pieces with quaking limbs and chattering teeth, stooped down and cleaned the knife by stabbing it swiftly up to the hilt in a clump of short grass that grew in the soil by the roadside. The sudden horror of the thing was too much even for the callous jerk, for his senses failed him, and he slid back into the dike among the rushes. And when he came to himself, the first streaks of dawn were rising over Romney Marsh. So I'll say this, my dear scholars. I've mentioned before that this story has been adapted multiple times. I actually never seen the earliest one, which is the earliest sound one, which is the 1930s version. But I have seen the Disney version. And I will say this, my dear scholars, this does not happen in that. In fact, there is almost no intense violence in that one like this. But oh boy, that is quite a build-up, my dear scholars, I have to say. Although it's kind of weird that we're not given a little we're not given a lot. I can't talk. Apparently, da, 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 da. We're not given a lot of time with Sennacherib as a character. All we know about him is he's the physician. He's seen the marsh ghosts, and that's it before he's out of the picture, which is a little bit odd. Now, I know that the book has prequels. Has several prequels, so I'm wondering if Sennacherib features more in those than he does in this. Because yeah, I am sorry, my dear scholars. As it is now, it just feels like he's there to make a point in the story. He's simply there to demonstrate how dangerous and how deadly the situation is. Which again I find interesting, but it is kind of sad that we don't get more of a build up to it. Still, let's move on and see what happens to poor Jerry Jerk. Um, I think I don't know well if this will be our last chapter or not. Because the chapters in this are fairly short, so this might not be. Huh. Chapter 10. Dr. Sin gives some advice. That he was still dreaming was Jerry's first thought, but he was so bitterly cold, for his clothes were wet with mud and dike water, that he quickly realized his mistake. However, it took him a power of time and energy, and not a little courage, before he dared creep forth from his hiding place. When he did, the marsh looked empty. The sheets of mist had rolled away, and it looked as innocent a piece of land as God has ever made. There was no sound save the tickling bubbles that rose from their mud bed to burst amid the rushes. No one in sight but the old gentleman lying outstretched upon the road. Jerry crept up to him and looked. He was lying face downwards, just as he had fallen, and the white road was stained with a dark, bloody smudge.
Well,
he said to himself. Here's another job for old Mips, and a trip to the ropes makers. And shivering with cold and horror, he set off as fast as he could go, towards the village. Now, when he was within sight of his house, he began to consider what it was his duty to do. He had his own eyesight to prove the schoolmaster's guilt. Would he be believed? Could the schoolmaster somehow turn the tables upon him? That actually is a good point. If he breathed a word to his grandparents, he would at once be hauled before that brutal captain, and the captain he felt sure would not believe him. The squire might, but the captain would, of course, take the side of authority and back up the schoolmaster. Dennis Cobtree was not old enough to give him counsel, and besides that, the captain was staying in the courthouse. No, Dr. Sin was the man to go to. He was kindly and patient, and would anyhow give one leave to speak without interruption. So, crossing the fields, in order to avoid his grandparents' windows, he struck out for the vicarage. Just as he was skirting the churchyard, he heard the tramp of feet, and the captain passed along the road, followed by the king's men. 2 of them were bearing a shutter. Then the murder was known already. They were going to get Sennacherib's body. Yes, that was it most certainly, for there was affixed to the church door a new notice. Jerry approached and read the large, glaring letters. 1 second. 1 second, my dear scholars. Sorry about that. Thought I was going to sneeze for a moment there. 100 guineas will be paid to any person or persons who shall directly cause the arrest of a foreigner, a seaman. White hair, pale face, dumb, no ears, 6 feet high, when last seen wearing Royal Navy cook's uniform. Necklace of shark's teeth around neck. Tattoo marks of a giblet on right forearm. Giblet. A cockatoo on left wrist, and a brig in full sail executed in 2 dyes of tattoo work upon his chest. This man wanted by the crown for the murder of Sennacherib Pepper, Doctor of Physics of Romney Marsh. Signed, Anthony Cobtree, Leveler of the Marsh Scots Courthouse, Dymchurch, and Howard Collier, Captain of His Majesty's Navy, and Coast Agent and Commissioner, Courthouse, Dymchurch. The writing on this notice was executed in most scholarly style, and Jerk knew the familiar lettering to be the handiwork of the murderous schoolmaster himself. Oh, twist. This colossal audacity was terrifying to him. It looked as if it had been written in the blood of the victim, for the ink was still wet. As he gazed, the church door opened, and Dr. Sin came out. He looked pale and worried, as well he might, for indeed this shocking affair had already caused the most terrible sensation in the village. "This is a bad business, boy," he said to Jerk, who was still gazing at the notice. You may well say that, sir," replied the boy. "Poor old Sennacherib," sighed the cleric. "To think that you went from my friend's house to meet your death. Well," he added hotly, shaking his fist across the marsh, "let's hope they catch the rascal, for we'll give him short shift for you, Sennacherib." "Aye, 'deed, sir," replied young Jerk, "and let's hope as how it'll be the right un what they does." "The right what?" asked Dr. Sin. "The right rascal," said young Jerk, "for that ain't him."
What do you know about it, my lad? Said the doctor.
The whole thing, replied Jerk. For I seen the whole of the ugly business. I'd seen the man with the pale face last night. I'd seen him a coming out of your front door with a weapon in his hand.
You saw him? Cried the cleric, his eyes shining with excitement. You could swear that in the courthouse.
I could do it anywhere, replied Jerk, let alone the courthouse. And what's more, I could swear that he never killed Dr. Pepper.
How can you possibly say such a thing? Said Dr. Sin.
Because I'd seen the whole thing done, as I keep telling
you, answered Jerk.
And it wasn't him as did it.
How do you know? Asked the doctor hastily. Where were you?
Out on the marsh, said Jerk, all night.
What? Ejaculated the vicar. Language, looking at the boy doubtfully. Are you speaking the truth, my lad?
The solemn truth,
replied young Jerk. You were out on the marsh all night? Repeated the astonished parson. And pray, what were you doing there?
Dogging that schoolmaster,
replied Jerk with conviction. Come into the vicarage, said Dr. Sin, and tell me all about it. And he led the boy into the house. When he had finished his tale, Dr. Sin took him into the kitchen and lit the fire, bidding him dry his wet clothes, for Jerk was still shivering with the cold of the dike water. Then he boiled some milk in a saucepan and set it before him with a cold game pie and a loaf of bread. Jerk made a hearty meal and felt better, his opinion of the clergyman going up at a bound when he discovered that a strong dose of excellent ship's rum had been mixed with the milk. Rum's good stuff, my lad, on occasion, he said cheerily, and I've a notion that it'll drive the cold out of you. And Jerry thought it a very sensible notion, too. And now look here, my lad, the doctor went on when Jerry could eat no more. What you've seen may be true enough, though I tell you I can hardly credit it. It's a good deal for a thinking man to swallow, you allow, what with the devil writers and all that, besides which I can see no earthly reason for the schoolmaster committing the crime. As yet I really don't know what to say, my boy. I'm beat, I confess it. I must think things over for an hour or so. In the meantime, I must strongly urge you to keep this adventure to yourself. It is very dangerous to make accusations that you have no means of proving, and certainly you can prove nothing, for there is nothing to go on but what you thought you saw. Well, a nightmare has upset better men than you before now, Jerry, and it is possible that your rich imagination may have supplied the whole thing. Go back, then, to your house, and get a couple of hours' sleep, and then go to school as if nothing had happened. And then I'll tell you what we'll do, my lad. You come round here, and we'll have a bit of dinner together, and talk of this again.
Thank you, sir,
said Jerk, very flattered at being asked to dine with the vicar.
I consider you've behaved very sensible over this horrible affair. Though where you get wrong, sir, is over my rich imagination. That part ain't true, sir. I knows what I'd seen. And I'd seen Rash stick Pepper twice under the arm with his pencil sharpener.
Oh, of course, that's what he used. So, of course, back then you'd use a certain kind of knife to sharpen pencils. So that's what the boy claims he saw. But Dr. Sin dismissed him with further adulations to hold his tongue, adding that the whole thing seemed most odd. On the way back from the vicarage, Jerk met with the sailors returning to the courthouse, bearing the remains of Senator Pepper upon the shutter.
After his conversation with Dr. Sin, he thought it best to keep out of sight, as he was not desirous of being questioned by the captain. And so, when they had passed, he slipped home, and managed to get into bed before his grandparents were astir. After his goodly feast at the vicarage, he found it difficult to eat his usual hearty breakfast. But he did his best, saying that the sound of this horrible murder and the thought of the man with the pale face who was wanted by the king's men must have put him off his feed. And so his night's adventures passed unheeded, for everybody was too busy discussing the murder and setting forth their individual opinions upon it to trouble themselves about any suspicious behavior of Hangman Jerk. So, my dear scholars, should we do one more chapter for the night before we go? Because I see the next chapter is incredibly short. Or should we stop here for now? As usual, I leave it in your hands, my dear scholars. I trust you explicitly. Okay, Zen says go for it. All right, we'll go for it. Our last chapter for the night. It's a very, very short chapter, only 3 pages long. Russell Thorndike seems to have a thing about his chapter lengths are not very, very long. They're not very consistent. There's 40 chapters in all in this book. We're currently at chapter 11, so it's just a very odd amount. Chapter 11. The Courthouse Inquiry. Let me just adjust my seating. Jerry Jerk made it a golden rule to be always late for school. But on this particular morning, he intended to be there before the schoolmaster, for he wanted to watch him, and if he saw an opening, make him nervous, without in any way betraying his secret. In the comfort of daylight, he had lost all those terrors that oppressed his spirit. Indeed, ever since he had unburdened his mind to Dr. Sin, he had entirely recovered his usual confidence. So, with jaunty assurance, he approached the schoolhouse, determining to be there before the murderer. But this same determination had evidently occurred to the schoolmaster, for when Jerry arrived at the schoolhouse, he could see Mr. Rash already bending over his desk. Jerry, imagining that he had miscalculated the time, felt highly annoyed, fearing that he may have missed something worth seeing. But on entering the schoolroom, he found that not one of his schoolfellows had arrived, and consequently his entrance was the more marked. As a matter of fact, Jerk's young colleagues were hanging about outside the courthouse until the last possible moment, for there was much going forward. Sailors on guard outside the door, people going in and coming out, and the gossips of the village discussing the foul murder of the unfortunate Pepper. Jerk went to his desk, sat down, and waited, narrowly watching the schoolmaster, who was writing, keeping his face low to the desk. The boy thought that he never would look up, but after some 10 minutes he did, and Jerk stared the murderer straight in the face. The schoolmaster bravely tried to return the stare, but failed. And then Jerk knew that he had in a measure failed also. Failed in his trust to Dr. Sin, for in that glance Jerry had unconsciously told the malefactor what he knew. Presently Rash spoke without looking up.
"Where have those other rascals got to?"
Presently Jerk answered,
"If you're addressing yourself to a rascal, you ain't addressing yourself to me." And I scorned to reply, but I mistook. "Well, I think you knows where they are as well as I do. Who ain't no rascal, but a respectable pot boy, and no scholard, thank God."
I don't know where they are, replied the schoolmaster, looking up. Be so good as to tell me, jerk, and I'll take this birch, and his voice rose high, and beat 'em all up to the schoolhouse like a herd of pigs, I will. Then, conquering his emotion, he added, Please, jerk, where are they? But Jerk was in no way softened, so placing his forefinger to the side of his nose and solemnly winking one eye, he said,
I don't know no more than you do, mister. But if you does want me to guess, I don't mind putting 6 and 6 together and saying as how you'll find 'em hanging about to get a glimpse at old Pepper's grisly corpse, what was brought from the marsh on a shutter.
I'll teach them! Shrieked the schoolmaster, flourishing the birch and flying out of the door.
That's it, added Jerk. You do, and I'll teach you too, my fine fellow, who rapped my head once. I'll teach you, and teach you till I till I teaches your head to wriggle snug inside a good rope's noose.
And Jerk followed the schoolmaster to see the fun. The crowd outside the courthouse was quite large. The crowd outside the courthouse was quite large for Dymchurch. Everybody was there, and right in front, enjoying the excitement, gaped and peered the scholars of the school. But Rash elbowed his way through the throng and fell upon them like a sudden squall, using the terrible birch upon the youngster's shoulders, quite regardless of the cries of "Shame!" and "Stop him!" from the villagers. But the onslaught of Rash came to a sudden conclusion, for the heavy hand of the captain's boatswain fell upon him, and ordered him immediately inside the courthouse. Jerk saw Rash turn the color of a jellyfish, inserting wildly that there must be some mistake, and that having his duty to perform at the school, he must beg to be excused.
It's my opinion, replied the boatswain in a hard voice, that them lads will get a holiday today. The inquiry is going forward about this murder, and I have orders to see that you attend.
So, keeping his rough hand upon the teacher's shoulder, he led him, still protesting vehemently, inside the courthouse, with the jeers and jibes of the scholars ringing in his ears. So, Rash, if he had just been smart and not gone anywhere to the courthouse, he would not be in this situation. 1 second, I have to open up another water. I have it right behind me. Oh my goodness gracious. Jerk had by now worked his way to the front of the crowd, and there he stood looking with wonder at the two great seamen who, with drawn cutlasses, were guarding the open door. Oh, thank you for the posture check, Julian20. Thank you. Dymchurch was having the excitement of its life, and no mistake. A holiday for the school, even the tragedy of Sennacherib Pepper's death, was forgotten in the glory of that moment, and the hated schoolmaster had been publicly stopped thrashing the boys, and himself ordered into the courthouse.
I wonder what for,
thought young Jerk.
I wonder.
He would have given a lot to see inside that upper room, where the inquiry was now about to proceed. Presently the captain himself came out of the hall and stood for a moment on the gravel outside, looking at the crowd. Now there were sailors keeping the crowd back. Never had there been such formal times in Dymchurch. The captain glanced at the little knot of schoolboys with their satchels, and suddenly, catching sight of Jerk, called out,
Hey, you! You're the pot boy of the Ship Inn, ain't you? Well, I want you. Step this way.
So his wish was granted, and followed by the wonder and admiration of the crowd, Jerry Jerk, pot boy of the ship, strutted after the king's captain into the courthouse. And we'll stop there, my dear scholars. Things have gotten rather troubling in the village, I'd say. Although I do wonder if Jerry's going to be able to keep his big mouth shut. He seems like the sort of kid who might get a little too arrogant about a situation. I mean, could you keep it a secret, my dear scholars, if you were in Jerry's situation? I mean, he was told by the vicar to essentially keep your mouth shut for now, just weigh it out. Could you do that? I personally don't know if I could. I probably would try to, but I'd probably spill it to someone else. Julian 20, heck no. Oh, you wouldn't be able to? Jeez. I just feel like Jerry's going to get in trouble at some point. He just seems like the sort to not be able to help himself, especially since he hates the schoolmaster so much. I just feel that he is going to try his best in some way to make sure the schoolmaster gets his comeuppance, which may or may not be a smart move on his part. All right then. So my dear scholars, next week, if everything goes according to plan, next Monday we will be playing more of The Last Campfire. It's been enjoyable, although I think we're a little bit stuck in the game, and hopefully we can find the answers we're looking for. And then next Thursday we will be doing more of Dr. Sin. I hope. Again, everything is dependent on everything going perfect, basically. But I'm so glad you could come here, my dear scholars, all of you. It's always a treat to have you here. So let me see if there's anyone we can raid tonight before we go. Yulian 20, thank you for the raid. You are very welcome, Yulian 20. Let's see who is online. Oh. Do we want to visit a reading stream or a gaming stream, my dear scholars? What do you think? We could visit Jewelry Jelly. She is playing. Okay, so Julian 20 says reading. We could do a reading stream. Jevnez is reading Hardy Boys, it looks like. Let's go visit her then. So then, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.